Hello everyone. For today's Murphy Law Monday, I want to go over the factors that go into the court's analysis for purposes of establishing child support and what you need to consider and what should not be a part of that consideration. First and foremost, the courts consider both parties' gross income. So you can think of the child support calculation as a T-chart of such, where on one column you have all dad's or mom's income, and on the other column you have the other parent's income. The gross income goes at the top. It's not your net income. It's not what you take home. And I know a lot of people are surprised when they hear this, but gross income is the court's consideration for a myriad of reasons. But most importantly, that is what you need to know and what you need to have ready to present to the court via your pay stubs or your tax returns. The next thing that the courts consider, and the most important thing that the courts consider, is what we call work-related child care expenses. Now, this becomes a hot topic item in my cases where the child is enrolled in daycare. Now, most times daycare is not cheap. So whichever parent is taking on the brunt of the daycare expenses, whether it be mom, whether it be dad, whoever, or if it's split, the courts will consider in their analysis who is paying daycare and for how much monthly. So in that analysis, you want to make sure you have proof of the receipts for the monthly cost for the child. If there are additional expenses that go into the daycare expenses, you want to have those ready as well. Now, an important factor is that they don't just consider daycare. They consider any expenses that relate to the parent having to work. So if the child has to go to before care or after care, because mom has to be to work at 7 a.m. or dad doesn't get off till 6:30, that is an example of a work-related child care expense that the parent who is paying that expense will get credit for on that T-chart, the monthly amount that they're paying towards the child support. And the courts will again consider that and what amount is due to the parent who is receiving the child support. Another thing that the courts consider, and which might come as a surprise to most people, is the extraordinary medical expenses. Extraordinary medical expenses are those expenses that you incur as a result of the child having some type of a medical issue. In my experience, this usually is, or for example, is the asthma. So if a child has asthma, requires a breathing machine, certain medications, a nebulizer, etc., that's the situation where whoever is paying for those things out of pocket, outside of the insurance premium, they will get a credit for that on the child support guidelines. Now, some people think that transportation, i.e. transporting the child back and forth during their weekends or picking up and dropping off, the expenses that they incur for those things go into the child support analysis. The law says that they may go into the child support analysis. And in my experience, they usually don't, especially if you all live within a certain distance from each other. Now, if you live 2 hours away or an hour and a half away, there's a lot of traffic, maybe Baltimore to DC, that's a situation where the court might give credit for that expense that the parent who is traveling back and forth has, or the court might sometimes deviate or go down on the child support obligation as a result of the parent who has to travel that long distance, having to pay that every time they see the child. Another expense that does go into the child support analysis is health insurance. So who covers the child for purposes of health insurance? And that does not mean what premium you pay out of your pocket monthly for health insurance coverage overall. It means what premium you pay to cover that child specifically. I've had many cases where my client or the other party covers multiple children. They have a family plan and they want to know if they can get credit for that. No, usually if there is one child who is covered on the family plan and there is 2 other children on that same plan, you would pay the same premium, so the courts don't give you credit for that unless there is proof that that child was the first child that was on the premium, and at that time you did not have the additional 2 other children and there was a premium that you were paying individually for that child. I usually ask my clients to go to HR in these instances, if they are the paying parent for the insurance, to get proof of the breakdown of the insurance costs, because that's another part of the court's analysis. They want to know how much it is. Usually your pamphlet can tell you employee plus child or employee plus 2 children, employee plus spouse, etc. You need that breakdown because the court needs to do some quick math to determine exactly how much you're paying. And that includes medical, dental, and vision. So all of those expenses that you pay to cover health insurance will be considered by the court. I just wanted to go over this because sometimes people think, oh, I pay an astronomical amount in my rent or my mortgage. I had to move when I got the baby. It doesn't matter. The courts don't care about your living situation. It could be a consideration if, again, they wanted to do a deviation, but they don't have to. So in looking at black and white, what is going to be before the court as far as numbers, even on a temporary basis, you want to make sure you have these numbers ready. That includes, again, to review the work-related childcare expenses if they exist and you're paying them, the health insurance premium specifically for the child, any extraordinary medical expenses, and if there's an astronomical amount of time that you're traveling to and from to pick up the child, you want to have that expense monthly that you pay. All of the expenses that I just listed are monthly expenses. For purposes of establishing your income, you want to have your gross income, and that can be proven either by a pay stub or your tax return. I just wanted to go over this. If you're in need of legal services in the state of Maryland or in the District of Columbia, please give my office a call, 240-493-9116 and www.amurphylegal.com. Thank you.